3:57, exactly at 3:58. I'll give you a question and options for poll, and I would request you to participate. So here is the first poll question for you, and I request all of you to give your views. I'm launching the poll now. Again, I can see, and I request those who are logging in from the mobile, we request you to please rename yourself so that when you ask the question, we know your identity. And those who are joining just now, this is a request. Please participate in the poll, which is in the process. Uh, your views will help us know you better. And as you can see, the first question is, what is the main factor that has restrained the growth in manufacturing in India? And we have all the possible options. And I would request both the speakers today to just have a look. I'll share the result with all. Those who are joining just now, 5 more seconds, I would request you to participate in the poll, which is in the process. Thank you so much for participating. I'll share the result for the first poll. Uh, I would request both the speakers to have a look. I'm sharing the result now. So as you can see, poor infrastructure has got the most views. People have voted for that. Now that gives us some idea about the thinking of the audience. Now quickly I'll share the second poll. Here is the second poll for you. There is 1 minute for this. I would request everybody to participate, and we'll begin the proceeding shortly. It is 4 p.m. and people have started joining now, so people are still joining. Thank you so much for participating. Those who are waiting to give their views, I would request you to participate in the poll. 5 more seconds for this. Now I would like to share the result for this poll. There are two more people joining. I would request you to quickly participate in the poll. I'll share the result. Now I end this poll and I would like to share the result. So here is the result from the poll. And well-trained human capital is one of the most important factors for India manufacturing to grow. And that gives a lot of understanding and insight for both the speakers today. I hope you'll be saying something about this. It is 4-3 and mostly people have joined. So without delaying the process, I would like to begin the conversation today. Uh, I again welcome everyone. I'm Sudhir Pandey and I'll be hosting today's webinar. There are some ground rules that I would like to say at the beginning. Uh, as I said, that those who are joining from mobile, we would request you that you rename yourself, and we'll taking all the questions at the end. First, both the speakers will interact. So we request you to put your questions in the chat to everyone so that others can also see and we can also see. And I'll be moderating the questions. So it helps us in two ways. Those who are having same sort of questions, they will avoid asking the same question. At the same time, that will also give you some idea to ask some interesting questions. Uh, one 30 more second. There are quickly people are joining, so I'm letting them in, and then I'll begin the introduction. So today's topic. Uh, the conversation series. Those who have been attending, but those who are new, for them, I would like to say that the conversation series is a very unique webinar of Amrit Modi School of Management, Ahmedabad University, and here we get two experts. They talk about on a very contemporary topic, and one comes from with a huge experience from industry, and one person from our school, one academic, and they both interact on the same topic. Sometimes both people come from industry, or there may be three people discussing on the same topic. And this is the ninth conversation in this series. Today's topic, as you all know, is can India unlock global export manufacturing opportunity? And why we think this topic is important, because with the situation emerging from COVID-19 and tariffs imposed on Chinese goods from all over the world, people are looking at India as a partial replacement for imports from China. And given the amount of dependence on China, the only alternative country that can have three things: the scale, the skills, and the space to service world demand effectively is India. While India still poses obstacles due to practices relating to both land, labor, and we all know that sourcing from India takes a lot of time and patience. So that's why we decided to have this conversation, and we have two experts. I would like to introduce two eminent experts. I would like to welcome Mr. Bharat Sripati. He is the Director, India Operations, IBCC Industries India Private Limited. He is a master's in mechanical engineering from GE Gannon University Leadership Program. He has 20 years of industry experience with leadership history in multinational companies like Honeywell, GE, and IBCC. He started IBCC India operations in 2019 with 40 employees, manufacturing plant in near Ahmedabad. And he has 10 plus years of experience in sourcing experience of machined, casting, forging, engineered products in India, North America, South Africa, and China. And he has received patents for design of connector at GE. Multiple recognitions he has received for sourcing leadership and project management at GE and Honeywell. And in his current role with IBCC Industries, he's the one who has been interacting with Chinese companies vigorously for the past 2-3 years. Welcome, Mr. Bharat Sripati. We would love to listen views from you. Second speaker for today is Professor Pankaj Vash. He's a professor of practice of management at Ahmedabad University, So at Amrut Modi School of Management, we have this unique faculty who come from industry, and we call them professors of practice. Professor Pankaj Vyas has a kind of huge experience. Before joining us, he was independent board director for 3 years in Lakshmi Vilas Bank, where he looked at different segments like audit, management, HR, strategy. He has spent 28 plus years with Accenture, where when he left Accenture as MD, he was part of the global leadership team of communications, media, and technology. In this communication, media, and technology, he held key roles, including Asia Pacific MD and Global MD for management consulting. One unique thing about Professor Pankaj Vash is he was at the center stage in transformation of Accenture into a global powerhouse, starting as a founding member to its India consulting practice way back in 1987-88. He contributed to Accenture's strategic agenda Horizon 2012, Human Capital Strategy and Leadership Career Frameworks. His contribution to Accenture's HR function and India BPO industry earned him the prestigious CEO with HR Orientation Award by Accord Services. We welcome both of you, and now I hand over the floor to you. We request you to begin the conversation.
દીપકભાઈ તો મોકલને એમને.
Thank you. Welcome everybody. Bharat, I'm glad we have this opportunity to have a conversation.
Thank you for the opportunity. For all the staff of Ahmedabad University, and also honored to work with you on this show. So
I noticed that we have some things in common. We're both mechanical engineers by education, although I didn't practice it. And we also have strong connections to Bangalore. I think you spent many years here as a young child, and I've been here in Bangalore, so it's good common ground to start.
Definitely.
So the topic, as Sudhir has explained, is really around India unlocking the global export opportunity, and just one or two comments about the importance, given the anti-China sentiment in the globe because of their perceived mismanagement of the COVID-19 crisis, has really woken up people around the world to the excessive dependence of countries and supply chains on sourcing from China. You add that to the anti-China sentiment in India because of the recent border standoffs. So from an India perspective, clearly this is a very hot topic in many ways.
Yeah.
And Bharat, as we start this conversation, the way I'd like to structure it for the benefit of the audience is start with the broad overall picture, some of the opportunities and challenges, then talk about what has happened and is happening on the ground, and then move to more of an action orientation about what we can do individually, collectively, and summarize the takeaways. Does that sound good to you?
Sounds perfect.
Right. Any comments you want to make before we start?
No, I think let's jump right into it.
Okay, all right. So the first question is, why is this important for India? Why should India focus on manufacturing versus services and agriculture? What are the benefits to the country and the economy?
So, in the last 2 decades, right, so agricultural output has significantly reduced, right? Like if you see, the statistics, 16.5% is the contribution of India's agriculture to the GDP. But if you look at the amount of people working, it's about 43.2% of our huge population is in agriculture. I mean, that's highly inefficient, right? So I know the past vice president of Niti Aayog, Mr. Arvind, he mentioned like move out and move up, right? So because the reason is that in industry, right, if you look at manufacturing industry, 16% of GDP contribution is from manufacturing, but only 12% of employment. From 12% of employment, you get 16% contribution. So efficiency is very high, right? So, and also for every single job in manufacturing sector, you have 2 or 3 jobs created in service sector, which is proven fact. Like, people have done research. So it's actually, that's why all these countries like Germany, Japan, they all moved out and moved up, right? So I think that should be the theme to industrialize and make manufacturing sector more critical. So I think that makes makes it very vital. And also all the agricultural people who are working can easily adapt to industry, like manufacturing industry versus a service sector, because it's hard for them to transition to a service sector in terms of the skills, right? So it's an easy adaptation as well. So in terms of getting jobs for people, it's wonderful. And also you will actually, you've seen like all the farmers suicide, all you can prevent all that by ramping up manufacturing.
So in that sense, Bharat, clearly a focus on manufacturing will have a multiplier effective on jobs.
Yep.
Plus it will generate valuable foreign exchange to the country.
Definitely.
While also upgrading our technology and manufacturing capability.
Yeah, I mean, the numbers are pretty alarming, right? Like if you look at US GDP, it's just from manufacturing is equivalent to GDP of whole of India. So, the kind of benefit you get from manufacturing is huge. So in terms of GDP growth.
All right. Well, okay. I think everyone hopefully understands sort of the importance of this and the benefits to this. So India has obviously been manufacturing a variety of products for many years, right?
Yeah.
And has had some success in different sectors. But if we look at what India should do as a country, as an economy going forward, what are the inherent comparative advantages that India has to offer to the global markets? And is the anti-China sentiment strong enough for companies and countries to really shift their manufacturing and sourcing bases from China, which manufactures in bulk, to India, which has somewhat of a mixed track record?
Right. I think, first of all, let me start with the first question, the advantage, right, India has. So out of many advantages, like, age is definitely a very, very top advantage, because our median age at 2030, year 2030 will be 31 versus 42 in China and 40 in US. So, the young population is going to be very vital for us to keep the, economy forward. And also English speaking qualified people, right? So highest number of English speaking qualified people you can get in India. So that's a big advantage. Of course, low cost of labor, that's a huge advantage. And growing domestic market, like, we've been growing like 7% year over year. So let's forget 2020. So nobody wants to remember 2020, right? So, but if you go back, 7% minimum year over year growth, which is huge. So yeah, the global market the domestic market is huge. And of course, government incentives, Make in India, smart cities, all these initiatives actually give a very good, solace or good confidence for a investor from, outside India, because they feel that, okay, India is actually progressing there. Their government is reforming, and we can talk more details as we move forward. I basically key competing emerging markets for India in this scenario is pretty much, you see Vietnam, Malaysia, Singapore. This is pretty much a graph that you can see. So hang on. So you can see the graph, and Vietnam, Malaysia, Singapore, Thailand, Philippines, they are all competing. And some of the lessons learned from Vietnam, right? Like they managed COVID-19 in a very excellent manner. So they are hardly impacted by COVID-19, and they pretty much, if you can see, like Samsung had set up their big operation in Vietnam, pretty much like in the sense that's the main operations. Like, and then they dream of selling cars to US, and they're taking huge strides. Right now, they're making a lot of commercial vehicle components. Vietnam. I mean, it's just amazing to see that small country do so well. Right? They're actually moving up the value chain. They're doing assembly of cars, and they struggled hard to actually improve a skilled labor pool. They took care of getting reliable electricity. Labor laws were improved, and you see they have a $480 billion plan of investment, right, in infrastructure. So they know exactly what is needed to attract foreign investments. So from that point of view, there's a lot of, you can take a leaf out of Vietnam's book. If we are wanting to see what the competitors are doing. Of course, there are other competitors, like there is Mexico out of if you look at out of Asia, there's Mexico and other countries, but these are the immediate countries which are giving us a threat. So we should make sure that we are making good plan to ensure that we keep attracting foreign business.
So the interesting thing is Vietnam, a relatively small country, has a history of conflict between North and South Vietnam. They have made such huge strides in spite of not having a very large domestic market, right? So
yeah,
if one says, well, if Vietnam can do it, right, and they have done it quite rapidly, India should definitely be able to do it, right?
Yes, definitely.
Obviously, Malaysia and Singapore, Indonesia have been in this game for long.
Yeah.
But I think the Vietnam example shows us with commitment, with clarity, with focus, we can make big strides
Sure.
to prove our ability to be a much larger export manufacturing country, right?
Yeah. I mean, basically, they're nimble. Like Singapore takes 164 days to enforce a contract, versus India will take 1,445 days. So, I mean,
You're lucky.
if you're lucky. Makes sense.
All right.
So
In terms of where India should focus, what are the sectors that you believe are the ones India believes or India can make a big success of from an export point of view, partly leveraging our success to date and partly leveraging our inherent advantages that you've talked about?
So basically, this is what I think. This is from my perspective what we have to focus, and I'm sure that when we look at a national level, there'll be experts coming in and weighing in on this, right? But if you look at it, we need to see where the opportunities are and then prioritize the sectors, like make it strategic. So and then make it visible to everybody, including the MSMEs and universities, so they know where the money is coming from, right? And so if you look at advanced rail equipments and engineering sectors, so it could be oil and gas, pumps and valves, construction equipment. So because the industries are not doing well, they're actually looking for a lower cost option. And because of the tariff situation and everything, they're looking at India. Right. So I think that there is quite a bit of demand in that engineering sector as a whole, and also agriculture. Right. So I would actually focus on agriculture. India is the world's largest tractor, industry, like accounting for 1/3 of world's production. Right. So why don't you use that industry and dominate in the world market? Right. Start manufacturing high-end farming equipment. So it's not a big leap for you because you're already in the field, right? And automotive, it's just automotive has been really good for India. 30.9 million annual production in 2019. That's huge, and pretty much $27 billion. Ending March 2019 fiscal year, right? Led by Ford, Hyundai, Maruti Suzuki, Volkswagen. So that's big for us, right? And we need to focus and make it bigger. Medical devices and biopharmaceuticals. We account for 1/3 of global vaccines just in Hyderabad. So I'm sure, there'll be more. We can increase our capacity there, and also medical equipments. we have a lot of these global companies setting up medical equipment industry in India. This has been for a while. So we should leverage and kind of expand the capacity, see how we can become a global competitor there. Well, I also have lined up like the advanced manufacturing / technology related items. It could be like 5G, industrial Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, and electronics, of course. Electronics is really big. Here, not only we can import, we can do import substitution. So recently we had issues of, trying to ban imports from, China, right? Like in the sense, so this will be a really big stride there. Not only do exports, but also do the import substitution. And of course, like high-end control systems and, robots, machineries to automate and increase productivity of Indian manufacturing setup, right? So basically, strategic focus will allow us to create organized jobs and estimate well about what skill is needed and how many number of jobs we need. So strategy is very, very important in this sector. So I'm sure that government is looking into it, and they might have their own.
As I look at this, I see some connecting of the dots. So if you look at agriculture, automotive, we have a large domestic market, and that becomes a good platform for exports because we're able to leverage the scale of both markets.
Right.
From a rail and engineering point of view, we've had a strong history, of investments and manufacturing. Obviously, we have a large domestic, train network. So I think there is, again, some benefit of connecting the dots. On the other hand, if you look at biopharmaceuticals or just pharmaceuticals in general, Indian companies have been the leaders in generics globally. And India, I think, is the largest manufacturer of vaccines, between Pune and Hyderabad. So there is a strong foundation, and we already have a bit of a brand name in those markets. So I think there is strong reason for those to be of importance. And in many of these cases, like in automotive, we will have overseas global players come in and they will invest in the facility, but also in technology. So it'll also upgrade our industry.
Yeah.
If you look at electronics, again, like you said, good import substitution, but huge domestic market. So, I think leveraging on the same kind of theory as we have for automotive, leverage the domestic market, scale, and then use that to drive global exports.
Sure.
The trade circuits and control systems is interesting because India has always had strong technical skills in the sense of information technology and things around that area. What we haven't done enough of is deploy that technology in our local industry. But creating local manufacturing capacity, I think, will also improve our domestic industry and the ability to use such advanced technology. So I see a lot of ways that your recommendations leverage the advantages and also leverage the domestic market, both in terms of demand and in terms of need. So I think this is a very good list. Did you want to add anything before we move on?
No, I think I'm good.
Okay, all right. So now we've talked about the opportunity, the competition, focus areas. Let's talk about where we are today, what has been done, what is being done to position India to be successful. So we've heard a lot of talk about SEZs, have been set up and earmarked as designated manufacturing areas for export with specific dispensation infrastructure. What is your view on how that is proceeding?
Well, SEZ is a very, very important part of attracting export companies or FDIs into India because of all the incentives, right? Like they get. But unfortunately, I think there has been like nearly 25,000 hectares of land which is lying unutilized. There has been like some issues with the money laundering and I think we can actually optimize this unutilized land and make the rules a little bit, change the rules to ensure that it's actually fitting the a new era, right? Because in this new era, not only people want to just export, they also want to cater for domestic market. Say if some foreign company is coming, right? So they don't want to just export to their own country or their customers. They also want to cater for the domestic market. So they should right now we need to tailor that a little bit, the SEZs, to accommodate even domestic market. And the third thing I see is that we need to look beyond, right? Like first of all, do what we can do with what we have. So optimize it, ensure that we can start utilizing it optimally, right? So and then when we are on this topic of land utilization, I also want to say that we should release all the assets that have been liquidated, right? Like in terms of the bank assets where the bankruptcies have been filed and it just hangs in there. There has been like thousands of acres of land lying idle. So this is the time for us to wake up to that fact, and then just change of ownership should be easier. And that's something that government can do easily, if you ask me. But I don't know what's the bottlenecks in handling this. But these things should be taken care, and maybe they can give it to industries, right? Government can buy from the bank and give it to industries.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of interesting points. One is we have infrastructure, we have a framework that maybe needs to be revised and updated to make it more conducive for export manufacturing, because often, when you want to manufacture at scale, you want the right infrastructure, you want your suppliers located nearby, you want, quick, easy logistics, and SEZs would intended for that, but maybe we got lost on the way. But it seems to me we can take what we have and make it better. And on the point of land, clearly land acquisition has always been a sore point for industry in India. And through the bankruptcy and insolvency process, we should take those assets which are unproductive and redeploy them to productive enterprises. So I think that those things can move with some more speed, because you don't need to necessarily invest lots more money. We have the assets, we just have to get better utilization out of them.
Right. No, I agree 100%.
So then, questions people always ask is, India has been talking about this for so long. What has happened? What is being done? Right?
I think if you see
happen today.
So just so that I'll start with Make in India, right? Like if you look at what things have happened in the recent past, right? So we have rose from ease of doing business. We have rose from 63rd position to 142nd position to 63rd, right? So which is a huge leap. Like I feel this is exactly when Make in India started. So I think the government policies are working, and this is not my perspective. This is JP Morgan's perspective. It's a bank where JP Morgan's views are taken seriously in the US. So I think this is how the outside world perceives Make in India efforts and how India is doing right now, right? So because I know there could be different perspectives, but this is exactly what we need from our context of exports. So if you see, India's growth remained ahead of rest of the world, between 2014 to 2019. So which is huge, right? And India is world's third largest startup ecosystem. All the innovation is happening, that needs to happen, which is very encouraging. And if you see, there are like 400 million smartphone users and rapidly growing. So, and I feel like a lot of government initiatives, it could be Aadhaar card linkages or any other initiatives, are all some way linked to digitization, right? So the smartphone users have been going up. That's a good thing. And then you can see JP Morgan clearly indicates, clearly shows that there's a positive trend since the launch of Make in India. and you can see FDIs like growing each year. So that growing trend is very, very, very positive. So that's
The policy framework is supportive. It has had positive impact, but do you have evidence of actually things changing on the ground with more manufacturing investments being made?
Yeah, I mean, you can see that, there's a bunch of, efforts and results, right? So like say, electronic manufacturing clusters. So because of that, there is a FDI inflow. So as I just said, Foxconn is investing $1 billion in India, to shift gradually from China. So 3.2 million Apple iPhones will be built in India, so I think in Tamil Nadu, right? So which is very encouraging. So I think we need more of this going on. So corporate taxes were slashed to 15%, So this will encourage a lot of FDI. So you can already see it's palpable, right? So 30 companies are waiting in the wings for Gujarat. They are actually investing 61,000 crores and generating 50,000 jobs in the next couple of years. So which is really encouraging. And around 1,000 foreign firms are presently engaged in conversation with Indian authorities, and 300 are actively pursuing production production plans in India. So which is in the sectors of smartphone, electronics, medical devices, textiles, which is encouraging, right? And then India has promised to allocate land twice the size of Luxembourg to offer companies that move from China. So I'm just waiting for that to happen, because that day it will be really good for manufacturing industry. Ease of job, as we discussed, has actually ease of doing business has actually significantly improved. And relaxation of labor laws, that was one of the bottlenecks. And states like UP and MP have taken measures to relax the labor laws quite significantly. So you can see in the last few months, UP has attracted quite a lot of business. So all these are very encouraging, and this is something that's being done on the ground. So and it's showing results like pretty much instantly.
So we are seeing some green shoots in terms of people taking India up on its promise and taking advantage of changes being made. So the question then becomes, what are the things that India must do or continue to do aggressively to sustain this momentum and build upon its advantages and the market opportunity? Because in India, often the view is, there's a lot of talk, not enough action. So maybe it'd be worthwhile talking about recommendations. And in that context, I just want to go back to the two poll questions. Clearly, infrastructure was mentioned as a big constraint. But in terms of enablers, skilled labor was the number one topic, followed by infrastructure. Now, obviously, infrastructure is a very complicated, multidimensional challenge, and that obviously the government is aware of. I think they're constrained by capital. But obviously, if you leave core infrastructure aside, which is a much bigger ticket item, what would you suggest are the things that India can do as a country, as economy, as individuals, as companies, as educational institutions to further this agenda?
Yeah, I mean, definitely skilling would be on top of my list too, because what's happening is, as I said, there is a gap, right? Like, we are not planning strategically and then implementing, implementing the skilling process. So say India targets to skill 500 million workers by 2022, right? So, but the current situation, we have 50 million, trained by NSDC, but out of which only 21 million got jobs. So there's a big disconnect, like in terms of strategy, like in a sense, once you skill somebody in one area, you should ensure that they're getting job in that area. So what I propose is like we need to have a strategic map of which sectors we are getting more investments, right? And then government has to like really review those strategic sectors and form, form like curriculum based on which sectors are investing more and how many jobs will be created, right? So from that point of view, there won't be this gap. And also,
Bharat, link the skilling initiative to the sectors that India will focus on, so the demand generated can be met by the supply, and there's end-to-end alignment.
yeah, and you have estimates when you have strategy, right? So you have estimates based on actuals. Like say if a company is spending 60,000 crores, and we will have like 50,000 jobs created out of that. So we should find out like, hey, what's the skills needed for those sectors, and accordingly plan a curriculum, right? Like for because we have all the we have the infrastructure, right? Government has created as a part of Make in India, but the plan, the planning, the strategy is what is the missing link, is what I think.
Well, I think partly, there are so many moving parts of this skilling initiative at the center, at the state level, which
Right.
to be aligned, and partly also there's the whole thing about our Indian cultural mindset of working with your hands, engaging in a vocational trade is not deemed to be the most desirable career, right?
Yeah, right,
So
right.
we have to overcome our historical mindsets around I want a white collar job versus a blue collar job. But in reality, many of the people who are coming off the farms, their natural next step is a blue collar job. So somehow we also have to find a way for our society
Yeah.
to begin to respect that more and give them the right place in our environment.
Oh, definitely. I agree. I agree totally, because without that, I think you see, manufacturing sector itself will there'll be a void without like hands-on work, and you see a lot of them who have risen up the ranks started with hands-on work, which is the story we need to tell the youngsters, right? So that we don't do that more often. So
Yeah, I think people often forget that there is the real world versus the virtual world. Everybody wants to work on PowerPoint, Excel, and spreadsheets, not realizing that it's the real world that makes these products and distributes these products. So
right.
we need to understand that unless the real world is made more and more effective, all of this soft stuff is not necessarily going to have much to do.
Right, right.
Also, going back to this Bangalore story, and if you look at what happened around independence in Bangalore, a lot of government manufacturing entities were set up, right? BEL, BHL, NAL, right? All
Yeah.
of the companies obviously had large manufacturing facilities, and their children have now moved on and moved to the IT sector. The question is how many have continued in manufacturing? So it does seem that the generations perceive this blue collar manufacturing environment as less attractive. But in India, like we've discussed, unless we can grow that, our economy will struggle.
Right. I think it's more of a strategy, right? Like we are not telling the right, the true story in terms of what's the opportunity, because there are a lot of people who may like, mechanical manufacturing sector, but they may not be aware that there is a lot of opportunities. Like say these export opportunities will create a huge amount of job. I mean, even if we can take half of what China is going to be like, giving away, that can probably, catapult us to our target of 5 trillion, like in a very short time. So 5 trillion economy. So
Yeah, I think communication, awareness, convincing people of the opportunity is important for them to say, yes, I'm going to focus on a vocational type of career manufacturing. But please continue with the other steps.
right. I mean, Of course, international collaboration is very much needed. In 2019, they had a lot of success with getting Germany and Japan to help in skilling. And I think we need to go, collaborate with more countries. And, once we have a strategy, then we align with the partnership with countries and then scale the, training process. So, and I feel like the biggest gap, I was just awestruck when I looked at the gap, right? Like China and India both have 1.4 billion people, and the workforce, the labor force, China has 800 million and India has 500 million. Guess where is the gap? It's the women, who are not in the labor force. So, we need to really address the gender gap. I think, incentivizing hiring women, re-entry of women, that's another big topic, right? So just because women had a gap, they want to take care of kids or.
Oh, yeah. In fact, companies can target such women who want to re-enter the workforce by creating conducive policies.
Yeah.
The other thing is talking about vocational training. In my experience, there's this huge network of ITIs, industrial training institutes, both government and private. They
Right.
could become an engine to generate trained people across different trades. Because today everyone wants jobs. And if we can create an awareness of the need, the opportunity, and the long-term potential, I'm sure there will be takers.
Definitely. I agree 100%. I mean, I've been going to China for like last 13 years, and I can see in every level, right? Like it could be labor, it could be management. There are so many women. I would love to see India like that. And that's definitely going to contribute to the GDP quite a lot.
Right.
So.
And to the position of women in our society, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Independent and economically able to make their own decisions.
Yes.
Should we move on, talk about some of the other points?
Yeah, the lack of flexible labor law. So we just talked about it, and if you have more than 100 employees in a plant, there's stiff regulations. Government has to approve any layoffs. So all that is not going to help the all the foreign investors are very closely looking at this issue because Maruti, the Suzuki plant, right, and Honda plants in India had quite a lot of problems with labor. So I think we need to really seriously look into this. UP and MP governments have already started liberalizing this labor reform, but we need like more comprehensive across the country.
Obviously, this is a complicated issue with many political overtones, right? Because the government's view and the labor unions' views are we have to protect labor. But what we have to explain is that by closing down companies, we will attract more investments, and instead of letting these employees be waiting for resolution of the future of these companies, they can go get jobs in new companies. So this whole thing about shut down will encourage new ones is something that we have to find a way to communicate. Otherwise, there's so much tied up in this suspended mode that benefits nobody.
Agree totally.
All right, please continue.
So, the second one that I want to address is the scale of operation, right? I think the first easiest thing for all of us to do is or somebody like Indian Institute of Foundrymen or manufacturing forums can do is they should actually bring together, the MSMEs, like say adopt a collaborate then compete approach, right? Right now, all the small players competing against each other, trying to get the piece of pie. But in reality, if you look beyond and look at the strategy, like, hey, there's a huge capacity coming in. Can't we collaborate and, maybe like 4 or 5 industries group, and then target one particular sector, one type of parts. And then that way they increase the capacity, they actually be competitive, right? They're overall competitive on the pricing. So we need to start looking at that. either
I
survive.
think China has used the cluster construct effectively, where in a certain geographic area, each individual enterprise makes one component, and then somebody assembles, and they all benefit
Yeah,
by focusing on a specific market and
exactly.
being able to scale.
Yeah, definitely. It's like they look at, say, you are a medium-sized company, and I am a small company, right? You look at me as a partner, right? Because my growth will be your growth. So it's not
Right.
as a somebody, So if that actually works in the long term. You're always looking at long term. So we need to start getting that mindset.
I also think partly what is important is that these entities form trust, right?
Yes, yes.
Because ultimately,
That's
the smaller ones are concerned, the bigger one is going to take advantage of them. So a
exactly.
trust-based approach
Hmm.
make a big difference.
Makes sense. Makes sense.
All
They
right,
either survive together or sink separately, right?
right.
So yeah, and long term, definitely collaboration with other countries to establish huge capacity. Also, there are a lot of multinational companies wanting to do a joint venture, on parts because they see that we don't have scale. So, if I look at, my own, my own company, right? So we are looking at certain type of steel casting, and the biggest, producer in India is probably medium to a medium size in China, and also we find many such companies in China. Here there's just one or two of them, and everybody else is very small scale. So that's why cluster becomes very important until we are able to invest and become big and get that scale in the long term. So
Okay.
moving on.
Recommendation.
Yeah, cost of cost disabilities, like cost of doing business. So if you see, like in logistics, there is a logistical performance index, and India fares like badly compared to our small neighbors, right? Like you look at Thailand or Vietnam, they're doing much better. So some things, like which I have faced, right? Like if I'm actually getting parts from somewhere in Himachal Pradesh, right, where I have a supplier. So and it takes from factory to the port, it takes anywhere between 14 to 21 days. That's highly inefficient, right? Like if you're looking at China, they take anywhere just 7 days. Anywhere, any part of China, it takes maybe 10 days, 7 to 10 days, right? Here it takes 14 to 21 days. I mean, yeah, it's mind-boggling, right? So there needs to be a dedicated train. Sometimes it's train, truck, and port. Sometimes it's truck, train, port. So based on where the supplier is, we need like dedicated trains from manufacturing hubs to the ports. It's not a big ask. I mean, there's already trains. I mean, they need to run dedicatedly and very effectively, right? On time, and several trains available, so that the shipments, they're not just sitting there idle. And then custom clearance process. I mean, it's a low hanging fruit. Government needs to really focus and get that moving. Ability to track shipments, for a timely delivery, right? It's a hardware software combination, solution. I've seen quite a few startups in the US. They give you one-stop solution where you can actually bid for different freight forwarders, and then you award the business to the freight forwarder, and you track the shipment from start to end. So you are efficient, okay, you're hitting your timeline, right? So because time is pretty much very critical for the customer. If you
Yeah,
say,
time is money, right? Every
yes,
day the shipment is pending is
right.
costing somebody. And you have this point about no stopping between state borders. Given GST and the e-way bill, do you see improvement in the transit time on road?
Yeah, that was a huge progress. I mean, like in the sense, the e-way bills have been a blessing, but what we would like to see is no stoppages between the borders, right? State borders, because you see all the developed country, they don't stop you between the state borders. So I think we can achieve it. Like we need to continuously improve, right? That's the mantra. We can't just get satisfied, but it's a big improvement. So
And I think energy cost is a topic that has often come up, and some of you have maybe seen the article about the Prime Minister inaugurating a 750 kilowatt solar plant in Madhya Pradesh.
right.
Will also supply to the Delhi metro, etc. So I think India has been on this solar and wind power, renewable energy journey. Do you think that is going to make things much better from a cost and availability point of view for power?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, solar is the lowest, in terms of 2.62 rupees per unit is pretty much the cheapest across, I would say across the country, right? Across the world. So, but I think, are we getting as an industry getting this advantage? No, like I think right now companies need to invest in renewable energy, wind and solar, and they need to subsidize their own cost, their own electricity, right? So yeah, I think that's the only way out right now in the short term. But long term, I'm sure Reva was a plant, 250 megawatt solar plant that was actually put up in Madhya Pradesh. So it's gonna, things like that. That's the largest in Asia, right? Government needs to invest more in such infrastructures, and hopefully at some point give free electricity to manufacturing industry, right? At some point, that's a long term. Hopefully in the long term that's going to happen. If I talk about technology, it's always we need a technology roadmap, right? So like that, I think we need a 10-year plan, and then we need to be more effective in managing what's coming at us. Right now, you can see that if some of the people here who are attending this conference may know that there is a Center of Excellence in Advanced Manufacturing Technology in IIT Kharagpur. So Tata company, BHEL, in collaboration with DHI, which is Department of Heavy Instruments. So basically, the government company has actually collaborated with industries to set this up in IIT. So I would strongly encourage universities, students to actually work with them. Try to learn advanced manufacturing technology, understand what you like, and then start contributing to this field, because this is very interesting. Because how it helps us, right? Speed to market. So all this innovation helps to speed to market, because right now, if a customer wants a product, by the time you design it, or by the time you actually give a prototype, their schedule will be too tight. Like, they might go to someplace else, right? So we don't have that technology which will accelerate the speed market. So we need those kind of tools, right? Okay. Using 3D printing for tooling and patterns for casting, and, getting back with a prototype as soon as possible, and then, artificial intelligence, industry 4.0, continuous manufacturing for things like commodities, right? Like metals. So raw material is expensive in India. India is actually one of the top raw material producers, but it's expensive. So let's actually find out good process, advanced process to actually reduce that cost, because that will help manufacturing industry quite a lot. And also being competitive across the world, right? So, and brilliant factory, right? So brilliant factory or smart manufacturing, linking the design, engineering, manufacturing, supply chain in one intelligent system. So you call it digital twin, one of the tool, where a US or a foreign company can be running a machine, and that machine breaks down. So, and then they are in the third shift, so they all go home. So somebody in India, when they wake up, they can actually have a digital twin of that machine, which they can actually troubleshoot. And by the time they come back to work, so they have found the issue, and they say, hey, this is what happened, because you have big data and you have digital twin. So you get all the data and understand, hey, what was the data when the failure occurred? And so you actually save time, productivity. So yeah, that's why we need to embrace technology. We need to look bigger picture in the next 10 years.